Morning, everyone. I hope you had a lovely weekend. This is our English lesson for this week. So this week we're going to be really busy getting ourselves ready to write our non-chronological reports on polar bears. So today we were just going to go through some vocabulary, which is really, really helpful when writing a non-chronological report. So I'm going to show you a good example of one, and then we're going to have a look and see if you can find some of the words that we want to start using in our own reports. So let me just share the screen with you. Ready, there we go. So a non-chronological report toolkit. Let's go on to the next page. So here you go, look, here's your little toolkit. We're going to use some words called generalizers. Now, generalizers are words that are often found in non-fiction books because they're a good way of explaining how often something happens, which is really important when writing a non-fiction text, because we can't say polar bears live in dens or polar bears all eat fish, because we don't know for sure that that is what happens. And so when you write a non-fiction text, it has to be fact. So you can use words instead like many polar bears eat fish, but some might prefer seal, or the vast majority of polar bears eat fish. So you can use different words like that, that's saying that you're not saying that every single polar bear does. So it's making it more factual. Okay. And it gives lots of examples of those words here. So all, the vast majority, which means most, or you've got the word most, many, a few, which means not very many, usually means something that not all the time, but happens most of the time. So we might say, we usually have playtime at 11:15, but sometimes assembly might run a bit late, mightn't it? And so we might go out a teeny bit later. So we could just say usually. Then we've also got some other words that we're going to have a little look for, which are called interesting adverbial openers, because if you write a report and every single sentence all starts the same with polar bears this, polar bears that, then it can sound a little bit boring, can't it? Okay, so an adverbial opener will give us more information to the sentence, but it also makes your sentences more interesting to read. So you'll see a lot of them, because they're adverbs, they all end in ly, which we've learned about adverbs in the past. So it's words like interestingly, surprisingly, curiously, fascinatingly, shockingly. There's lots of different words for you can use for an adverbial opener. So it might be interestingly, polar bears actually have black skin. Did you know that? So we can write things like that in it, and those words help to give it a really good effect, make it more interesting, and give more information to your sentences. Now, another thing that makes a really, really good report is using technical vocabulary. And we've done lots of that through our geography. We've learned lots of new vocabulary, haven't we? Iceberg, bear, polar bear, the fact that they live in a den, the ice shelf, pack ice, tundra, lots of new vocabulary that we've used. And then when we did the science for food chains, we've got predator, haven't we? Prey, which would be the fish or the seal that the polar bear might want to hunt to eat. So there's lots of technical vocabulary that we want you to try and put into your reports as well when we start to write them. Okay, they're the three really that I want you to have a think about this morning. So the next thing that we're going to look at then today is I've got here a report that Mr. Heesam and I wrote a while ago called Underwater Dragons, and it's information all about an underwater dragon. Okay, so it talks about what it looks like, its habitat. And if you notice, when you write a non-chronological report, you organize your information into paragraphs, and those paragraphs each have a little heading. You have to really organize your non-fiction writing. So in here, what we're going to do then is we're going to see if we can find any generalizers. So let's have a little look through. I'll do like the first one, I think, with you. So interestingly, the underwater dragon has elaborate green scales that cover the whole of its body and help to keep it camouflaged. Can you guess how many teeth this dragon has? It has 50 sharp, deadly spikes along its back, which are poisonous, so don't get too close. If any predators approach it, the underwater dragon will raise its spines in defense to act as a warning not to approach. Usually, these species of dragon uses its large flipper-like feet to help it glide through the water gracefully and has special gills to help it breathe. When it opens its mouth, you can see its sharp, jagged teeth ready to attack. It has a magnificent tail which is longer than 3 buses, and it helps the dragon to swiftly knock any enemies out of its way. So when you look there, can you find any words that are a generalizer? Now, when I was reading through there, I only saw one. I wonder if you can spot what word it is. Remember, it's going to be a word that says, it may not say just the dragons do this. It's going to be a word that tells you roughly how many. So it might be many. It might be most. It might be generally, meaning that's what happens most of the time. Or what was another word we use for that? Can you spot it? Pause this and see if you can find it with your grown-up. Okay, right. I wonder if you found the word that I did. The generalizer in this paragraph, look, is usually. So it doesn't just say this species of dragon uses its large flipper-like feet to help it glide through the water. Because maybe there might be the odd underwater dragon that doesn't. And so it says usually, which means that that's what happens most of the time. But sometimes something might happen and that might not be the case, just like Miss Eckett said with playtime. So that's one. Let's have a look and see if we can find any more. All right, so let's read this paragraph, habitat. So most underwater dragons live in the deepest, darkest oceans of the world. The vast majority live in underwater stone caves where it hides from any larger predators, but some live in abandoned shipwrecks. Surprisingly, these creatures are rarely seen by human beings as they tend to dwell at the bottom of the ocean, so you would be lucky to ever catch sight of one. Now, I can see a few in that paragraph. In fact, I can see 3 different generalizers that you could use in your report. Can you spot them? Just pause the video and see if you can find them with your grown-up. Okay, so the very first word is a generalizer, isn't it? Because it's not saying just underwater dragons live in the deepest, darkest oceans of the world. It's saying most underwater dragons. So we're making that as more of a fact, because we can't say that every single underwater dragon in the whole wide world would do that, because we don't know for certain, do we? And we've got to make sure that we're being factual when we're writing our non-chronological report. So we've put most underwater dragons live in the deepest, darkest oceans of the world. Then it says the vast majority live in underwater stone caves where it hides from any larger predators, but some live in abandoned shipwrecks. So what word there gives you information about the amount of dragons that might do that might live in stone caves? You're quite right. The vast majority. Now, majority means most. So like when we have our votes in school, like we did for outdoor equipment, if it's the vast majority, that means that's what most people have voted for. So majority means most. So the vast majority live in underwater stone caves. So that's 3 different generalizers I found. And I think if you go through the report, there are some more. And what you're going to do is when you find them, highlight them onto your piece of paper, and then I'll show you what you can do with a table that I've made for you as well. Right, so if we go back to the beginning then, let's have a look at the other type of words we've got to look for. So it says on here, we've got to look for adverbial openers. So an adverb is telling you how you do something normally, isn't it? But sometimes it can change an adjective. So if something's interesting or something is surprising, you're describing it. But if you add ly onto it, you're changing it into an adverb. So we've got in here, interestingly, surprisingly, curiously, fascinatingly. It could be shockingly. It could be sadly. It's just giving more information to your sentences. So interestingly, or fascinatingly, actually, that's a really good one for this. So fascinatingly, polar bears actually have black skin. And what did they say? It said hollow fur, didn't it? Which was very, very interesting to find out. So you might use them in that sort of way in your report. So I wonder if you go through my underwater dragon report, can you find any adverbial openers in there? So let's read again. Interestingly, oh, we found one straight away. Interestingly, the underwater dragon has elaborate green scales that cover the whole of its body and help to keep it camouflaged. So we've put interestingly in there because we thought it might be an interesting fact that people might be interested to know. Interestingly, the underwater dragon has elaborate green scales that cover the whole of its body and help to keep it camouflaged. So let's go through and see if we can find any more in another section. Let's have a look here. Let's read the habitat one. So most underwater dragons live in the deepest, darkest oceans of the world. The vast majority live in underwater stone caves where it hides from any larger predators, but some live in abandoned shipwrecks. Surprisingly, these creatures are rarely seen by human beings as they tend to dwell at the bottom of the ocean, so you would be lucky to ever catch sight of one. So there is one adverbial opener in that sentence, in that paragraph. I wonder if you could find it. That's right, it's surprisingly. Now remember, the clue in finding those in the text is that they will all end in an ly. So what I'm going to do, children, is ask you if you can go through the whole of my underwater dragon report, and I want you to circle or highlight all of the generalizers and adverbial openers that you can find in the report, okay? Then what you're going to do is you're going to write them down in this table because we're going to collect all this vocabulary so that we can use them when we write our report later on in the week. So there's a section there where you can write down all the generalizers that you find, all the adverbial openers that you find, and then any technical vocabulary. Now, the technical vocabulary will be the words that you've learned during our topic on polar bears. So if you can find any technical vocabulary in my report, like I know it said predator, and that's a word that we've learned through our science, then you can write that down in the technical vocabulary section. But also, as well as my underwater dragon report, what I want you to have a go at doing is seeing if you've got any non-fiction books at home, any books about different facts about, it could be anything, it could be about cars or knitting a scarf, it could be anything that you have at home. I want you to have a little read of them and see if you can find any of the generalizers or adverbial openers that you think might go really, really well in your report. So we're finding lots of vocabulary to help make our reports really, really interesting for people to read. And then what I want you to do is maybe you could go back through some of your geography work and science work that you've been doing at home and see if you can write down some of the words that you have learnt in this topic. I know that we've done some of these words in shared reading. We've definitely done it in geography. And I've mentioned some of the words that I think you could use, like tundra, den, polar bear, ice, iceberg, ice shelf. There are lots and lots of different words that you could write down in there that might be helpful to use in your non-chronological report. And when you've done that, I'd love to see those in your portfolio so I can see what interesting vocabulary you're going to use when we start writing. Okay, good luck, everybody. I look forward to seeing your work. Oh, just got to stop sharing. Bye, everyone.